Okay, class. Who in here is of Japanese ancestry? Okay. So, yeah, the history of Japan.
Just 25%.
Okay, so 25%, that's still a vast amount larger than a lot of people in this country. I mean, there are a lot of Japanese Americans. You know, I've met a few. You know, my friend Cassie from near my hometown. She's half Japanese. You know, her mother was from Japan. Mother's from Okinawa, actually. Her father was a military man. Go figure.
My Nana was born and raised in Japan.
So there you go. And I was gonna say, does she talk crap to you in Japanese?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
She speaks full English.
Honestly, my mom and aunt and uncles never learned Japanese. She was actually really
wow.
Well, she didn't actually teach them or use it when they were kids because she was afraid that they would get confused, and she didn't want them to be like run the risk of social ostracism if they could, cause she was afraid it would affect their ability to learn English at a young age, which is not true. But
no,
I mean,
it's not. Well, it's a legitimate fear, especially for since
well,
we
because
weren't enlightened
it was really hard for her to come from Japan to East Tennessee.
Of course,
because my grandfather he grew up on a farm,
farm boy.
An old school farm, so like slopping the pigs, like everything.
Yeah.
So that was kind of weird for her. I mean,
I was gonna say, was she a city girl or was she
well, they lived out. I mean, back when she was a little girl in Japan, it was a lot of rural areas. I mean, they lived out.
Okay. I was gonna say because was she around for the earthquake? For like the big earthquake that happened before? When was it? What year did she migrate over?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I actually don't know how old she was when she came. She was in her 20s.
Okay.
But she was still a young girl during World War II.
Okay. I was going to say because if a little bit of time before there was a huge earthquake that it pretty much caused the Japanese to either adapt or die because it was so devastating to the capital that it caused a lot of
actually
high tension.
Her pet chicken got blown up.
That's both hilarious
sad.
And sad.
Well, they had food rations and it was like their pet or the kids, her siblings, they all thought of it as a pet and they didn't want to eat it, but it didn't matter because they moved out in the countryside and it got blown up.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so
that's awful. It's so bad.
Anyway, so his family has a rich history in Japan. Yeah, his mother or his grandmother originally from Japan.
Pet chicken got blown up by those salty Americans. It's awful. So I feel so bad.
Oh, it's okay.
Poor chicken.
Well, it's a confusing. Well, it's
a very confusing thing for where I come from.
Well, I was gonna say Japan and the United States were ardent enemies during World War II, and now we're like the best of friends in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
well,
go to Japan for everything.
I'm honestly a firm believer that most modern war is fabricated by governments, not actual people.
Well, yeah, okay. I give props to that on a lot of the modern wars, especially Vietnam and Persian Gulf and the Iraqi War. Like the only one I don't know about the war on terror. I think that one's mostly propagated by the government.
Yeah, well, I mean there was no actual official war declared by Congress anyway, so.
So yeah, there we go. All right, so we've rambled. We do that
always.
I mean, have you not watched this channel before?
I started to say.
And people complain, "Oh, video starts here." It's like, okay, if you're only here for the video, then what are you doing here? The original video is down in the description. If you only want to see the video, see the video. If you're here for us, then stay here for us. But if you don't want to hear us talk at the beginning, okay, that's all well and good. But if you're only here for the video, hey, don't come to us for the history of Japan. Go to Bill Wirtz's channel for the history of Japan, because that's where it rightfully belongs. All right.
Japan is an island by the sea filled with volcanoes, and it's
go with the history.
In the year -1 billion, Japan might not have been here. In the year -40,000, it was here, and you could walk to it, and some people walked to it. Then it got warmer, some icebergs melted, it became an island, and now there's lots of trees, because it's warmer. So now there's people on the island. They're basically sort of hanging out in between the mountains, eating nuts off trees and using the latest technology, like stones and bowls. Ding dong, it's the outside world, and they have technology from the future, like really good metal and crazy rice farms. Now you can make a lot of rice really, really quickly. That means if you own the farm, you own a lot of food, which is something everybody needs to survive. So that makes you king. Rice farming and rice kingdoms spread across the land, all the way to here. The most important kingdoms were here, 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 and here. But this one was the most important, ruled by a heavenly superperson, or emperor for short. Knock knock, get the door, it's religion. The new prince wants everyone to try this hot new religion from Biekt. Please try this religion, he said. No, said everybody. Try it, he said. No, said everybody again, quieter this time. And so the religion was put into place, and all the rules that came with it. Then the government was taken over by another clique, and they made some reforms, like making the government govern more, and making the government more like China's government, which is a government that governs more. Hi, China, they said. Hi, dipshit, said China. Can you call us something else other than dipshit, said Japan. Like what, said China. How about Sunrise Land, said Japan. And they stole China's alphabet and wrote a book about themselves. And then they made lots of poetry and art and another book about themselves. Then they stopped moving the capital every time the emperor died and kept it in one place for a while, right here.
Well, that's true.
And they conquered the north, finally. Get that squared away. A rich hipster named Kukai is bored with modern Buddhism, visits China, and learns a better version, which is more spiritual. Comes back, reinvents the alphabet, and causes art and literature to be great for a long time. And the royal palace turned into such a dream world of art that they really didn't give a shit about running the country. So if you live outside the palace, how are you supposed to protect your shit from criminals? Hire a samurai. Everyone started hiring samurai. Rich, important people hired samurai. Poor people who could not afford to hire samurai did not hire samurai. The samurai became organized and powerful, more powerful than the government. So they made their own military government. Here, they let the emperor still be emperor, but the shogun is actually in control.
Yes.
Breaking news, the Mongols have invaded China.
We've invaded China,
said the Mongols.
Please respect us, or else we might invade you as well.
The Mongols are pretty bad news.
So the Mongols came over, ready for war, and died in a tornado. But they tried again, and had a nice time fighting with the Japanese, but then died in a tornado. Then the emperor overthrows the shogunate. Then the shogunate overthrows him back and moves to Kyoto and makes a new shogunate. And the emperor can still dress like an emperor if he wants, that's fine. Now there's more art. Like painting with less colors, collaborative poetry, plays, monkey fun, tea parties, gardening, architecture, flowers. It's time for who's going to be the next shogun. Usually it's the shogun's kid, but the shogun doesn't have a kid. So he tries to get his brother to quit being a monk and be the next shogun. He says okay, but then the shogun has a kid. So now who's it going to be? Vote now on your phones. And everyone voted so hard that the palace caught on fire and burned down. The shogun actually didn't care. He was off somewhere doing poetry. And the whole country broke into pieces. Everyone is fighting with each other for local power, and it's anybody's game. Knock knock, it's Europe. No, they're not here to take over. They just want to sell some shit, like clocks and guns and Jesus. So that's cool, but everyone's still fighting each other for control, now with guns. And wouldn't it be nice to control the capital, which right now is puppets, with no one controlling them? This clan is ready to make a run for it, but first they have to trample this smaller clan, which is in the way. Surprise, the smaller clan wins, and the leader of that clan steals the idea of invading the capital and invades the capital. And it goes very well. He's about halfway through conquering Japan when someone who works for him kills him, and then someone else who works for him kills them, and that guy finishes conquering Japan. And then he confiscated everybody's swords, and made some rules. And now I'm going to invade Korea, and then hopefully China, he said, and failed, and also died. But before he died, he told these 5 guys to take care of his 5-year-old son until he's old enough to be the next ruler of Japan. And the 5 guys said, yeah, right, it's not going to be this kid, it's going to be one of us, because we're grown-ups. And it's probably going to be this guy, who happens to be way more rich and powerful than the others. A lot of people support him, but a lot of people support not supporting him. They have a fight, and he wins, and starts a new government, right here. And he still lets the emperor dress like an emperor, and have very nice things. But don't get confused, this is the new government, and they are very strict. So strict they closed the country. No one can leave, and no one can come in. Except for the Dutch, if they want to buy and sell shit, but they have to do it right here. Now that the entire country was not at war with itself, the population increased a lot. Business increased, schools were built, roads were built, everyone learned to read, books were published, there was poetry, plays, sexy times, puppet shows, and Dutch studies. People started to study European science from books they bought from the Dutch. We're talking geography, skeletons, physics, chemistry, astronomy, and maybe even electricity. Over time, the economic and cultural prosperity began to gradually slow down. Knock knock. It's the United States, with huge boats, with guns, gunboats. Open the country. Stop having it be closed, said the United States. There was really nothing they could do, so they signed a contract that lets the United States, Britain, and Russia visit Japan anytime they want. Choshu and Satsuma hated this. That sucks, they said. This sucks. And
then Tom Cruise became the last samurai.
With very little outside help, they overthrew the shogunate, and somehow made the emperor again, and moved him to Edo, which they renamed Eastern Capital. They made a new
Tokyo.
government, which was a lot more Western. They made a new constitution that was pretty Western, and a military that was pretty Western.
Yes.
And do you know what else is Western? That's right, it's conquering stuff. So what can we conquer? Korea. They conquer Korea, taking it from its previous owner, China, and then go a little bit further. And Russia rushes in out of nowhere and says, "Stop, no, you can't take that. We were going to build a railroad through here to try to get some warm water." And Russia builds their railroad,
Some warm
supervised
water.
by a shit ton of soldiers. And then when the railroad was done, they downgraded to a fuck ton. Did I say downgraded? Not upgrade. And Japan says, "Can you maybe chill?" And Russia says, "How about maybe you chill?" Japan is kind of scared of Russia. You'll never guess
they
who's
are.
also kind of scared of Russia. Great Britain. So Japan and Great Britain make an alliance together
Yep.
so they can be a little less scared of Russia. Feeling confident, Japan goes to war against Russia. Just for a moment.
Russo
And then
Japanese
they get
war.
tired and
Yeah,
stop.
the Russo
It's time for World War I. The world is about to have a war because it's the 1900s and weapons are getting crazy, and all these empires are excited to try them out on each other. Meanwhile, Japan has been
Also,
enjoying conquering stuff. And
First
wants-
social program
the
funded by
next thing on
Central
the list
Banking in
is
Europe
this part
was
of
World
China
War
and
One.
lots of tiny islands. All that stuff belongs
The
to
Marshall
Germany,
Islands?
which just had war declared on it by Britain because Britain was friends with Belgium, which was being trespassed by Germany in order to get to France to kick France's ass because France is friends with Russia, who was getting ready to kick Austria's ass because Austria was getting ready to kick Serbia's ass because someone from Serbia shot the leader of Austria's ass. Or actually shot him in the head. And Britain is currently friends with Japan, so you know what that means. Duh, Japan should take the islands. Which they wanted to do
And they
anyway,
do.
so they called Britain on the telly to sort of let them know. And then they did it. And they also helped Britain a little here and there with some errands and stuff.
They did.
Now the war is over, and congratulations, Japan. You technically fought in the war, which means you get to sit at the negotiating table with the big dudes, where they decided who owns what. And yes, Japan gets to keep all that shit they stole from Germany. You also get to join the post-war mega alliance, the League of Nations, whose mission statement is to try not to take over the world.
Yeah.
The Great Depression is bad, and Japan's economy is now crappy, but the military is doing just fine, and it invades Manchuria. In the League of Nations, it's like, no, don't do that. If you're in the League of Nations, you're not supposed to take over the world. And Japan said, how about I do anyway? And Japan invaded more and more and more and more of China, and was
Yep.
planning to invade the entire East.
You've got mail.
It's from Germany, the new leader of Germany. He has a cool mustache, and he's trying to take over the world and needs friends. This also got forwarded to Italy. They all decided to be friends because they had so much in common. It's time for World War II. Germany is invading
The
the
sequel.
neighbors. Then they invade the neighbors' neighbors. Then the neighbors' neighbors' neighbors, who happened to be Britain, said, holy shit. And the United States started helping Britain because they are good friends, and started not helping Japan because they're friends and our friends are not friends. Plus they're planning on invading the entire ocean. The United States is
They
also
were.
working on a large, very huge bomb, bigger than any other bomb, ever. Just in case.
Two of them.
But they still haven't joined the war. War looks bad on TV, and the United States is really starting to care about their image. But then Japan spits on them in Hawaii and challenges them to war. And they say yes. And then Germany, as a symbol of friendship, declares war on the United States also. So the United States goes to war in Europe, and they help the gang chase Germany back into Germany. And they also start chasing Japan back into Japan. And they haven't used the bomb yet, and are curious to see if it works. So they drop it on Japan. They actually dropped 2.
Damn. Shit.
One new Horcrux from USSR. Oh man.
You win.
United States installed a new government, inspired by the United States government, with just the right ingredients for a post-war economic miracle. And Japan starts making TVs, VCRs, automobiles, and
Pretty much
camcorders
becomes
as
the
fast as they can,
pretty much the
and also
technological
better than everybody
manufacturing
else. They get
empire
rich, and the economy goes
before
wild.
China just
and then the miracle wears off.
destroyed everybody.
But everything's still pretty cool, I guess.
Wow.
That was interesting.
That was
That was probably the best history lesson I've ever seen. I mean, honestly, if all history lessons were like that, I think more people would pay attention in class.
That was pretty wild.
That was awesome. I was gonna say there's another one out. It's called The History of English, and it shows like the building of the English dictionary, like when the words were added throughout the Dark Ages and everything. And it was I saw that a long time ago. That is a beautiful piece of YouTube right there. But this right here, wow. I was gonna say I didn't know if they were gonna go offensive with it.
I mean,
And
history is always going to be a little offensive because, I mean, you look at all these empires, I mean, there's a lot of killing that goes on in every...
Yeah, I was going to say, Saudi Arabia is, quote-unquote, our best ally in the Middle East, but yet they behead people and put them on spikes like it's the olden times. And Japan is responsible for honestly, for some of the worst mass killings and mass rapes in history, especially during the Sino-Japanese War. The Russo-Japanese War, it was just, basic fighting between the Russians and the Japanese. Whereas whenever they went into China and the Sino-Japanese War broke out, there were like mass rapes and murders and all that the Japanese were okay with. And I was going to say, when they talked about the atomic bombs, there's actually one guy, let's see. Survived.
I read a really interesting article.
There he is, Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, get this.
Radiation
look at this.
survivor.
Guy lived to be 93 years old.
That's a tough dude.
That's a tough
Cause of
man.
stomach cancer.
Yeah, and
I actually read a really interesting article in. It was actually from in a ceramics magazine. There was a ceramicist in Japan, and one of the bombs detonated and actually fired some of the pottery. Most of it was destroyed, but it fired it to like cone 10, which is that's pretty legit. I can't remember exactly what it is.
It's like ultra
Fahrenheit
hard,
or centigrade. Most of them just couldn't handle being fired that quickly. But so there was some surviving radioactive pottery from this ceramicist that died.
Wow.
It was like, of course, it was like I think it was up for auction. It was for millions of dollars, and of course it had to come with like a special containment thing because it was radioactive.
Jeez.
Can you imagine like radioactive sake, just like?
Oh God.
Like
I was gonna say it's like anything, all the stuff that's radioactive in Fallout that you
like Fallout New Tokyo. Like,
yeah. Oh God.
How awesome would that be?
Why is that
like
not
a
thing?
Fallout game
Bethesda,
set in Japan?
Bethesda, get working on it.
Right.
I was gonna say anyway. Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. He is the only person to have known. Although at least 100, he is the only person to be officially recognized by the Japanese government as surviving both explosions because there's good records of him being there on both days. A lot of people. I was going to say there's a history lesson I think a lot of people need to take into effect. For those of you who are sports fans, Wilt Chamberlain, the only man ever to score 100 points in a basketball game. The building could only fit about 2,000 people, but yet 20,000 people have said, "Oh, I was there that night."
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of people can say, "Oh, I was there at both bombings," but this guy actually has irrefutable proof. It actually showed he actually worked for Mitsubishi, and he was in Hiroshima on business on August 6th, and then the bomb popped. And then, despite his wounds, which I hear were really bad, he made his way back to Nagasaki to continue working. And then on August 9th, boom, here comes the second one. I mean, holy mackerel.
That sucks.
Well, and here's the thing. You would expect that guy to die fairly early because of the radiation and all this and all that.
He had a lot of Radaway tucked.
Yeah.
Tucked
Must
in
have.
his,
well, anyway,
in his
the
vault
guy
suit.
the guy was born March 16th, 1916, and he died January 4th, 2010.
That's extreme.
At 93 years old. How tough was this guy? I mean, honestly, and stomach cancer eventually got him, and they say it was because of his, exposure to the radiation and everything, which has been shown to cause cancer.
Radiation does tend to punch holes in your DNA.
Yeah, so for this guy to survive it, not only survive it, but survive both bombings.
That's impressive, yeah.
That's, whew. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, there was actually talk of James Cameron making a movie about him. I'd be all for that.
That'd be cool.
I mean, honestly, why not? I mean, it's a beautiful story. It's a very interesting story.
Well, it's interesting to note that the firebombing in Tokyo killed more people than the atomic bombs did.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's because of the just population density.
Sure.
I mean, population
well, and just the
density
amount
in
of
Tokyo.
firebombing they did. I mean,
oh yeah.
I think the combined total of the atomic bombs was like 135,000.
Imagine if they would, there was talk of them dropping the atomic bomb on Tokyo because they didn't know the exact extent of how much damage it could do. But I was going to say there was actually a debate that I took part in a long time ago when I was in high school. The doves and the eagle, or the doves and the hawks.
Yeah.
I was on the side of the hawks because the necessary bombings and everything. Trying to verify the necessity of the bombings and everything. And eventually we won the debate. We each got points, if we thought, made a good point. And I made one point. It was to not know the extent of the bomb and for them not to drop it on Tokyo without knowing the full extent, albeit them dropping it on Hiroshima. The first, they knew what the damage would be when they did Nagasaki because, they had a good...
They'd already done it.
Yeah, they'd already done it. And, for them to drop the first bomb on a less populated city like Hiroshima, that's still a lot of people. Still a lot of people. I mean, nowhere near compared to Tokyo or Kyoto or any of the other larger cities. But... Well,
and then, of course, you have, radiation poisoning afterwards.
Yeah, in which there was no way they could know about that either because they, it's the first one ever launched. We're the only country ever to launch two.
Did they not do some testing out in the Nevada desert?
Well, that was really
was that after?
That was after. That was in like the 1950s to show the extent of the bomb. Like the air blast that happens. Like you see like those houses like getting demolished and everything from the atomic bombs.
If I remember correctly, there were several members of the Manhattan Project that committed suicide after they saw. Well, what they produced,
several of them became severely depressed. Oppenheimer even quoted the Hindu Bible stating, "I am become death," because he realized he knew the extent of what the bomb could do experimentally. He had a theoretical evaluation of what it could do, but. A lot of people blame Einstein because they say, "Oh, he was the leader of the project."
Einstein wasn't like ordering bombs dropped on people. He was just a scientist.
He was a scientist that was that he actually increased the attention the government should put towards nuclear energy, in which nuclear energy is nearly limitless, though there are side effects if not properly monitored and everything. Which the UK uses 70% of their power for the longest time came from nuclear energy.
Sure.
And they're trying to change that, in which they should. But here in the U.S., a lot of our power used to come from coal and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was honestly, coal is an efficient burner. I mean, there are clean ways to burn it and everything. And I agree. We should go green, but the fact that we dropped out of coal so fast as to pretty much warp the economy in this way, I think is just stupid.
Of course, we have a unique perspective because I'm East Tennessee, but you're more Southwest Virginia, and Southwest Virginia, that was a big deal.
Oh, huge deal, man. I mean, honestly,
it kind of depends on where you're from because it's easy to look at things, when you're far away. But like this, for me, I'm a little closer to this than most people would expect because, I could very easily not have been here depending on some of the decisions made. Back in the 40s, because my grandmother was in fact Japanese.
Yeah,
and very close to a lot of the fire bombings.
Yeah, so based upon that, you wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have the Kraken.
Or they could have chosen a different target. If they had chosen Tokyo for the atomic bombs, because she was out in the countryside outside Tokyo.
I was gonna say my great grandfather Elmer, he was actually in the Navy. And guess where he was based? Pearl Harbor. And he left 2 weeks before the bomb. He left 2 weeks before. And for those of you who wish to know which ship he was on, the Arizona.
There was one interesting. My grandfather on my dad's side, he was in the Navy. My grandfather on my mom's side that married my Japanese grandmother, he was in the Air Force. That's why he was over there.
Okay.
But my mom's parents are younger, so they weren't really old enough to be involved in World War II. But my dad's father, he was in the Navy. I believe he was a radarman first class.
Okay.
And they disobeyed orders and stopped to pick up survivors from a ship that had been hit by a U-boat.
Oh.
And they were so low on fuel and supplies, they were sitting so high in the water, the U-boat launched torpedoes at them, but they passed underneath because they misjudged how high they were sitting in the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody believed them. They couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove it, but he was radar first class. He detected it. And it wasn't
Wow.
till like it was like 45 years later, a documentary on the History Channel. There was a German officer on the U-boat that corroborated that story. That they tried to attack that boat and failed.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was like this weird.
Jeez,
Yeah.
dude, that's awesome.
It was bizarre. So it's kind of weird how things fit together, and
Well,
they
life
were
is a
very
strange
close to
thing.
they were very close to not fitting together.
Yeah, well,
Because my dad wouldn't have been born because my dad's name, my grandfather named him after his best friend in the war.
yeah. Well, it just goes to show you, life is full of those little, those little things.
So
that
there were two instances where my family lineage came close to ending 2 generations back with me nowhere in sight.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
you were. I mean, honestly,
Because of World War II.
Yeah, and you see, World War II, 60 million people altogether died
Yeah.
during World War II. A third of them were Russians.
I started to say the majority of them were Russians. I mean, essentially were sacrificed by their own government.
Yeah.
Just
Shows you how highly Stalin valued his people. Yeah, we could go off topic on that.
I mean, that's the
about
thing.
communism and everything, but
I have, a lot of people, probably have differing perspectives. I don't think it was necessary to drop the atomic bombs. Firebombing killed far more people, and they had no idea what it could have done, And now, I mean, those bombs, they're cherry bombs compared to what they've developed now.
oh gosh,
you know.
the Tsar bomb, the largest bomb ever detonated. The U.S. built a bomb that was technically more powerful, but they disassembled it because they were afraid of what would happen
Sure.
if they detonated it within the atmosphere. Just like the Tsar bomb, they detonated it. It registered an 8.3 earthquake
Sure.
within its immediate vicinity. And as a matter of fact, the vibrations from it were so strong, it could still be measured on the Richter scale on its third trip around the world. I mean, that's how powerful that
That's
bomb
insane.
is. I mean, honestly, we have developed weapons that can literally destroy the planet. Like literally in one fell swoop.
I mean, several
Boom.
times over. I don't understand the nuclear stockpiles that exist because, I mean, you could literally destroy the world, half a dozen times.
Well, yeah, the Russians built enough bombs to destroy the world 3 times over. The U.S. built 10 times. 10 times
yeah.
over.
So I guess
And-
is that just they were worried about like some of the silos getting taken out, so they had extras? I don't know.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, you could make judgments and assessments all day and night, but at the end of the day, extermination from nuclear bombings, I mean, that benefits nobody.
I mean, well,
Everyone
it's
dies.
like Fallout isn't outside the realm of possibility. We need to start building vaults right now because
Yeah, Vault. Yeah, hey, Vault Tech, if you exist,
nukes are serious.
nukes are serious. And I was gonna say, all it takes is one nutcase getting a hold of one with a trigger and a rocket. Game over. I mean, honestly, I don't think Kim Jong-un is dumb enough to do it. I think Kim Jong-il was. I think he was crazy enough to do it. But thankfully, they couldn't develop rockets quick enough.
Yeah, I mean, how do we know? Like, a closed country with literally no information. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that.
Because how do you know they even have anything, or if they're not just some boogeyman that our media peddles? I mean,
Yeah, truth be told, I don't want the bombs to fall, but at the same time, if they do, it's just there'll be nothing we can do about it.
no. Start stocking up on Radaway.
Yeah, start stocking up on Radaway, blood packs, and purified water. Go down into a vault and just be like, well, here's the end of the world. See you in 50 years.
Yeah, for real.
And then we come out of the vault. We're just like old men. We've got our kids and everything, and we're just like, you remember this basement? Good God. Nothing's changed. We should have just stayed down here.
Yeah, for real.
All right. So, yeah, that was the history of Japan. Wow. We went off on a tangent there. And I was going to say.
Yeah, sure did.
So, anyway, the history of Japan by Bill Wirtz. Check it out in the description. Awesome video. Leave a like and a comment on that video. Show love to this video. All that, guys. Also, if you liked what you saw here, feel free to let us know down in the comments below. Also, if you like our takes on this, leave a like. Also, if you wish to subscribe and see more of this awesomeness every day, just hit that subscribe button. And well, I think that's going to do it for this episode, everyone. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you later. Peace out. Bye.